She was standing behind me. I knew it before I even turned around. I could feel her cold breath on the back of my neck while the red recording light on my microphone blinked slowly in the dark room. My podcast was live. Thousands of people were listening. My voice shook as I spoke into the mic. This is the Horror Podcast Show. My name is Daniel Brooks. Tonight I was going to tell you a scary story that someone sent to me. But something strange is happening right now. I could hear her breathing again. Slow. Soft. Right behind me. But the worst part was this. My apartment door was locked. My windows were closed. And I lived alone. I slowly turned my head. At first I saw nothing. Then the light from my computer screen showed something standing near the wall. A woman. But something about her was wrong. Her hair covered her face like a dark curtain. Her arms hung down too long, almost touching the floor. Her dress looked old and wet, like it had been pulled out of deep water. My heart started beating so hard that I thought my listeners could hear it through the microphone. "Hello?" I whispered. She did not answer. She only tilted her head slowly. Then the microphone beside me made a strange sound. A whisper. But it was not my voice. It was hers. "She told you not to read the story." My blood ran cold. Because the story I was reading tonight was about her. And what happened next that night would become the most terrifying moment of my life. But to understand how she ended up in my apartment during a live podcast, I need to tell you how this story really started. It started 3 days earlier. 3 quiet days that felt normal. 3 days before everything changed. My name is Daniel Brooks. I live in Denver, Colorado. I run a small horror podcast called Night Signal. It is not the biggest show online, but people enjoy it because I read real scary stories that listeners send to me. Every week I get hundreds of emails. Some are creepy. Some are fake. Some are just strange. But one email stood out more than the others. It arrived at 2:17 in the morning. The sender name was strange. It only said, "She." No last name. No email signature. Just that single word. I almost deleted it. But something made me open it. Inside the email was a short message. It said, "Daniel, please read my story on your podcast. But be careful. Once you say her name out loud, she begins to listen." Below the message was a document file. The title of the story was simple. She. I laughed a little when I first saw it. People send creepy titles all the time. But when I opened the file, something strange happened. My computer screen flickered. Just once. Then the story appeared. The first line said, "If you are reading this story out loud, she is already close to you." I remember shaking my head and smiling. "Nice try," I said to myself. It was a good trick for a horror story. But something about the writing felt different. Most stories people send are messy or rushed. This one was clean. Short sentences. Simple words. Almost like it was meant to be read slowly. Almost like it was meant for a podcast. I scrolled down. The story talked about a woman who appears when someone reads her story out loud. She listens first. Then she comes closer. Then she stands behind the reader. The last line of the story said, "Do not turn around." I leaned back in my chair and laughed again. "Okay," I said. "That's actually pretty good." I decided it would be perfect for the next episode. Short. Creepy. Simple. The kind of story listeners love. I replied to the email. But when I tried to send the message, the email address was gone. The sender line now only showed one word. Unknown. I thought it was just a glitch. So I saved the story and forgot about it. The next day was normal. I went to the grocery store. I bought coffee. I answered other emails from listeners. But later that night something strange happened. At exactly 2:17 in the morning, my computer turned on by itself. The screen glowed inside my dark apartment. I woke up on the couch and looked at it. The story file was open again. She. I felt a small chill run through me. But I told myself it was nothing. Just a computer glitch. Still. I closed the file. and turned the computer off. The next day, I started preparing my next podcast episode. I added sound effects. I tested my microphone. I organized the story list. She was going to be the final story of the night. The last story is always the best one. That evening the weather in Denver became strange. Dark clouds covered the sky. Thunder rolled far away. Rain tapped slowly against my windows. Perfect weather for a horror podcast. At 10 p.m. I went live. "Welcome back to Night Signal," I said into the microphone. "Tonight we have some very strange stories sent by our listeners." The chat room filled quickly. People from all over the United States joined. New York, Texas, California, Florida. I started reading the first story. Then the second. Everything felt normal. The rain outside became heavier. Wind pushed against the windows. Then it was time for the last story. The one titled She. I looked down at the printed page on my desk. For some reason the room felt colder. My lights flickered once. I cleared my throat. "All right everyone," I said. "This final story was sent by someone who calls themselves She." A loud crack of thunder shook the building. I smiled nervously. "Let's begin." I started reading. "If you are reading this story out loud, she is already close to you." At that exact moment something tapped on my window. Tap, tap, tap. I stopped reading. "Probably just the rain," I said to my listeners. But something inside me felt uneasy. Still, I continued. "She listens first." The tapping stopped. She moves closer. My microphone made a soft static noise. She stands behind the reader. And that is when the lights in my apartment turned off. Everything went black. Only my computer screen stayed on. The chat exploded with messages. People asking if it was part of the show. I tried to laugh it off. "Looks like the storm hit my power," I said. But then I heard something inside the apartment. A slow dragging sound. Like wet cloth moving across the floor. My heart started racing. "Hello," I said quietly. No answer. Just silence. Then, a whisper came through my microphone. Soft. Cold. Right beside my ear. "She told you not to read the story." I froze. The whisper was not coming from my mouth. It was coming from behind me. And that is when I felt it. Cold breath. Right on the back of my neck. Someone, or something, was standing behind me. And slowly, very slowly, I began to turn around. I turned around slowly. My chair made a quiet creaking sound as it moved across the floor. My heart was beating so loud that it felt like a drum inside my chest. For a moment, I saw nothing. Only darkness. The power in my apartment was still out, and the only light in the room came from the pale glow of my computer screen. But then I saw her. She was standing in the corner of the room. Her body looked thin and twisted, like it had been bent the wrong way. Her long black hair covered her face completely. The old dress she wore looked wet and heavy, like it had been soaked in dark water. She did not move. She only stood there, watching. I froze. My mouth went dry. "Hello," I whispered again. My microphone was still on. Thousands of listeners were hearing every word I said. But no one spoke in the chat anymore. The screen was strangely quiet. Then she took one step forward. The floor creaked under her foot. My breath caught in my throat. I pushed my chair back and stood up quickly. "Okay, this isn't funny," I said nervously. My voice sounded small inside the dark apartment. She did not answer. Instead, her head tilted slowly to the side. Then another whisper came through my headphones. But this time it did not sound like it came from behind me. It came from inside the microphone. "She can hear you." I jumped back. The whisper sounded like it was coming through the podcast itself. Like someone was speaking through the broadcast. My hands started shaking. I looked at the chat screen again. Messages were suddenly flooding in. What was that? Is this part of the story? Dude, that whisper was real. Someone is in your room. My chest felt tight. This might be a prank, I said quickly. But deep inside, I knew it wasn't. Because she started moving again. Another slow step forward. The light from the computer finally reached her face. Or what should have been her face. My stomach twisted when I saw it. There was no face. Only pale skin. Smooth. Empty. No eyes. No nose. No mouth. Just a blank surface like a broken doll. I stumbled backward. My leg hit the desk. The microphone fell over and rolled across the table. The woman stopped walking. She was now only 6 feet away from me. Her arms slowly lifted. They were too long. Too thin. Her fingers looked like long sticks. Then suddenly, my computer speakers blasted with loud static. The podcast chat exploded again. What was that? Daniel, run. There's something behind you. The static sound became louder. Then through the noise I heard something else. A voice. It sounded like dozens of voices speaking at once. She listens. The woman took another step. She follows. Another step. She arrives. My legs felt weak. I grabbed the flashlight from my desk drawer and turned it on. The bright beam filled the room. For 1 second the light hit her directly. And that's when something impossible happened. Her blank face slowly changed. Like soft clay being pushed from inside. 2 dark holes formed where her eyes should be. Then a deep crack split across her face where a mouth should be. The mouth opened wider. And wider. Until it stretched across her entire head. Inside that mouth was only darkness. Endless darkness. Then she spoke. Her voice sounded like broken radio signals. You read the story. My flashlight shook in my hand. I didn't know, I said. The chat on my computer screen was moving so fast it was impossible to read. Thousands of people were watching this moment live. You called me, she whispered. I was just reading a story, I said quickly. She took another step. You said the words. My back hit the wall. There was nowhere left to move. My heart felt like it was going to explode. What do you want? I asked. For a moment she stopped moving. The room became completely silent. Even the storm outside had gone quiet. Then she slowly raised one finger. And pointed at the microphone. You told them. The microphone suddenly turned on again by itself. The red recording light blinked. My headphones filled with whispering voices. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. All repeating the same sentence. She listens. My hands covered my ears but the sound did not stop. Then my computer screen changed. The podcast recording software closed. A new window opened. It was the story file again. But something was different now. The story was longer. New words were appearing on the screen. Typing themselves one letter at a time. I stared in horror as the text formed. Daniel Brooks lives in Denver, Colorado. My stomach dropped. The typing continued. He reads the story out loud. The woman stepped closer again. He turns around. My breathing became fast and shallow. The story was writing itself. And it was writing about me. He sees her. The whispering voices in my headphones became louder. He cannot escape. My legs shook so badly I almost fell. No, stop, I said. But the typing continued. He understands too late. The woman was now only 3 feet away from me. Her long arms slowly reached forward. Every person who hears the story becomes part of it. My eyes widened. I looked at the chat screen again. Thousands of listeners were still watching. Still listening. Still hearing every word. The story continued typing. And now they are listening. The whispering voices in my headphones suddenly changed. They were no longer whispering she listens. Now they were whispering something else. They called her. My blood ran cold. Because those voices. They sounded exactly like the voices of my listeners. Thousands of people repeating the same sentence. They called her. The woman tilted her head again. Her long mouth stretched wider. Then she spoke once more. But this time her voice sounded clearer. Almost human. You didn't just call me. She lifted one long finger and pointed directly at the computer screen. You brought them too. At that exact moment the power in my apartment suddenly came back on. The lights exploded to life. The storm outside returned with loud thunder. And when the bright light filled the room, the woman was gone. I gasped and looked around wildly. The corner where she stood was empty. The floor was empty. The doorway was empty. She had vanished. My chest heaved as I tried to breathe. For a moment I thought it was over. Maybe it had all been some strange dream. Maybe stress had made my mind play tricks on me. Then I looked at my computer screen again. The chat was completely silent. Not one message was moving. Thousands of usernames were still there. But nobody was typing. Nobody was speaking. It looked like everyone had frozen. I leaned closer to the microphone. Hello, I said. No answer. Then something new appeared in the chat. One single message. It came from a username I had never seen before. The name was simple. She. The message appeared slowly. Letter by letter. She is with you now. My heart stopped. Because right at that moment, I felt something cold wrap gently around my ankle from under the desk. The cold hand tightened around my ankle. I screamed and jumped back, knocking my chair over. My flashlight rolled across the floor, spinning in slow circles as its beam moved across the dark room. For one terrifying second, I thought something was pulling me under the desk. But when I looked down, there was nothing there. No hand. No shadow. Nothing. My ankle still felt freezing cold. I quickly backed away from the desk until my back touched the wall again. My breathing was loud and shaky. The chat screen was still frozen. Thousands of listeners were still connected to the live podcast. But no one was typing. It looked like the entire chat had turned into a graveyard. Then suddenly, a new message appeared. She, look behind you. My heart dropped. I did not want to turn around. Every horror story I had ever read told people never to do that. But something inside me forced my head to move. Slowly. Very slowly. I turned. The hallway behind my living room was dark. The light from the ceiling barely reached inside it. For a moment I saw nothing. Then something moved. Just a little. Like a shadow sliding across the wall. My stomach twisted. Hello. I called out, my voice shaking. No answer. But the chat suddenly moved again. Messages started pouring in. What was that? Someone is there. Dude, run. We saw it. I stared at the screen in horror. How did you see that? I asked. Another message appeared. She, we can see what you see. The whispering returned in my headphones. But now it sounded different. It was not just whispering. It sounded like breathing. Thousands of breaths. Slow. Heavy. Like a crowd of people standing very close. Then the podcast software suddenly opened again by itself. The red recording light blinked. The broadcast was still live. I slowly walked back to the desk. My legs felt weak. I leaned closer to the microphone. Is everyone still here? I asked quietly. For a moment there was silence. Then the chat exploded. Yes. We're here. Something is wrong. End the stream. My hand moved toward the keyboard. I tried to press the button to stop the broadcast. But the mouse would not move. The cursor was frozen. No, I whispered. Then the story file opened again. The same file. She. But now the page was filled with new words. Thousands of them. The text kept typing by itself. The clicking sound of keys echoed in the silent room. I watched in horror as the story continued writing. Daniel tries to stop the broadcast. I pulled my hand away from the mouse. The typing continued. But it is too late. The whispering voices inside my headphones started repeating the line. Too late. Too late. Too late. I ripped the headphones off and threw them onto the desk. But the whispering did not stop. Now it was coming from the speakers. Then something else happened. My webcam light turned on. The small green light blinked. The camera was active. I quickly covered it with my hand. But the chat reacted instantly. "We can see you. Don't move. What is that behind you?" My body froze. Slowly, I lowered my hand from the camera. The viewers could see my room, my desk, the dark hallway behind me. Then another message appeared from the same username. "She." The message typed slowly. She is closer now. Asterisk. My skin crawled. I slowly turned my head toward the hallway again. This time, she was standing there, half hidden in the darkness. Her long hair hung over her shoulders. Her twisted arms hung down at her sides. Her mouth was still stretched wide open. But this time I could see something inside it. Faces. Dozens of faces. Pale faces pressing against the inside of her mouth like they were trapped behind glass. And some of those faces were moving. Trying to scream. Trying to escape. I stumbled backward again. "Oh my God," I whispered. The chat exploded with panic. "What is that? End stream. Run." But the story on the screen kept typing. "She is hungry." The woman stepped forward into the light. Her long fingers scratched the wall as she walked. They gave her power. Another step. Every listener. Another step. Every voice. I shook my head. No, this can't be real. But the typing continued. She grows stronger the more people hear her story. My heart sank. That meant something terrible. The thousands of listeners watching. They had helped bring her here. The woman was now only a few steps away from me again. Her mouth stretched even wider. Inside it, I could see more faces now. Some of them looked terrified. Some of them looked frozen in silent screams. Then suddenly one of the faces moved closer to the front. My breath caught. It looked familiar. Too familiar. I leaned closer to the screen to see the reflection in the webcam. The face inside her mouth was mine. My blood turned to ice. "No," I whispered. But the story continued typing. "Soon Daniel will join the others." The woman lifted her long arms slowly. Her fingers stretched toward me. The whispering voices filled the room again. But now they sounded louder than ever. Thousands of voices repeating the same sentence. "She listens. She listens. She listens." Then something strange happened. The chat began typing by itself. Thousands of users all sending the same message at the same time. The screen filled with words. She listens. Asterisk. She listens. Asterisk. She listens. Asterisk. The woman stopped moving. Her head slowly turned toward the computer screen. Then she smiled. Her impossible mouth stretched wider than ever before. Then she whispered one final sentence. "Now they all belong to the story." The lights in my apartment suddenly shut off again. The room fell into complete darkness. My computer screen flickered. The story finished typing its final line. And now, the next person reading this story has already started listening. Then my microphone picked up one last sound. Very close to it. A quiet whisper. Right beside my ear. "Turn around."